From record-shattering performances to jaw-dropping comebacks, Adrian Peterson's career wasn't just impressive, it was iconic. Today, we're breaking down just how good Adrian Peterson really was, looking at the stats, the moments, and the legacy of one of the greatest to ever carry the football. Don't forget to subscribe. Adrian Peterson's rise to greatness began in Palestine, Texas, where he was born on March 21st, 1985. He was surrounded by athletic excellence. His mother, Bonita Brown, was a three-time Texas State track champion who earned a scholarship to the University of Houston. Meanwhile, his father, Nelson Peterson, played college basketball at Idaho State and harbored dreams of making it to the NBA before. However, Nelson's brother accidentally shot him in the leg while cleaning a gun, putting an abrupt stop to his professional hopes. Even as a young boy, Adrian showed an extraordinary level of energy and determination. His father nicknamed him All Day for his endless drive to keep going no matter the challenge. Peterson's drive was evident in his early performances on the field. During his junior season at Palestine High School, Adrian ran for an incredible 2,051 yards and 22 touchdowns, proving himself to be nearly unstoppable. He somehow found a way to elevate his game even further as a senior, rushing for an unbelievable 2,960 yards and scoring 32 touchdowns. That's an average of more than 11 yards per carry, meaning Peterson was picking up a first down almost every time he touched the ball. At 6 feet 2 inches and around 210 pounds, he was a man among boys, using his powerful frame to shrug off tacklers. While football was his primary focus, Peterson didn't slack off in track and field either. He followed his mother's footsteps and became one of the fastest sprinters in the state. He competed in the 100 and 200 meter dashes, as well as the triple jump and long jump, regularly winning medals at state-level competitions. To top it all off, he capped his high school career with a performance at the 2004 U.S. Army All-American Bowl, where he put on an insane performance. He rushed for 95 yards and scored 2 touchdowns, leading the West team to victory. For his efforts, Peterson was awarded the Hall Trophy, given to the nation's best high school football player. No surprise that Peterson's athleticism made him one of the most coveted recruits in the country. Schools like Texas, USC, and Miami were all in the running, but Adrian ultimately decided on the University of Oklahoma. When Adrian Peterson arrived at the University of Oklahoma in 2004, the expectations were enormous. Playing under head coach Bob Stoops, Peterson instantly became the focal point of the Sooners' offense. From the very first game of his freshman season, Peterson showed he was built differently. He rushed for 100+ yards in each of his first 9 games. By mid-season, he was already being touted as one of the best running backs in college football, not just among freshmen, but overall. Peterson's signature moment as a freshman came during the annual Red River rivalry game against Texas. Facing a defense that knew they had to stop him, Peterson still ran for 225 yards, leaving Longhorn defenders in his wake. This performance gave Oklahoma fans plenty to cheer about, and Peterson's freshman season was filled with such moments. Against Oklahoma State, he recorded a career-high 249 rushing yards, once again carrying the Sooners to victory. By the end of the regular season, Peterson had led Oklahoma to an undefeated record and a spot in the BCS National Championship game. Even though the Sooners fell short against USC, Peterson finished second in Heisman Trophy voting that year and also named a consensus first-team All-American, the first Oklahoma freshman ever to receive that honor. He racked up 1,925 rushing yards that year, which broke the NCAA record for most rushing yards by a freshman. His incredible season also included 15 rushing touchdowns as he bulldozed his way through defenses week after week. One of the most impressive aspects of Peterson's freshman year was his workload. He carried the ball 339 times, the most in the nation that season, and showed no signs of slowing down despite the physical toll. Heading into his sophomore season in 2005, expectations were sky high, and Peterson picked up right where he left off. Despite battling a high ankle sprain that caused him to miss several games, he still managed to rush for 1,208 yards and 14 touchdowns in just 11 games. That's an average of over 109 rushing yards per game, even while playing hurt. His highlight that season was an 84-yard touchdown run against Oklahoma State, where he left defenders grasping at air. In 2006, his junior year, Peterson came out of the gate firing on all cylinders. The best description of his season was a 183-yard performance against Iowa State, with his father in the stands watching him play for the first time since being released from prison. One thing for sure, it was an emotional moment for Peterson. Unfortunately, Peterson's junior season was cut short by a broken collarbone he sustained during a touchdown dive against Iowa State. Despite missing the final 7 games of the regular season, he still finished with 1,012 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns in just 7 games. His per-game averages were staggering, over 144 rushing yards and nearly 2 touchdowns per game. Peterson's 3 years at Oklahoma solidified him as one of the greatest running backs in college football history. In just 31 career games, he rushed for 4,045 yards and 41 touchdowns. Those numbers rank him third in Oklahoma's all-time rushing list, despite playing fewer games than the players above him. His per-game averages were off the charts, over 130 rushing yards and more than a touchdown per game. When he declared for the 2007 NFL Draft after his junior season, there was little doubt that he was ready to take the next step. At 6'1" and 217 pounds, Peterson's physical attributes were ideal for an NFL running back. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds, but despite this, questions about his long-term health caused him to slip slightly in the draft. Ultimately, the Minnesota Vikings selected Peterson with the 7th overall pick, making him the first running back taken in the 2007 draft class. Of course, Peterson wasted no time proving he belonged. In his very first NFL game against the Atlanta Falcons, he rushed for 103 yards on 19 carries and caught a 60-yard touchdown pass. That performance set the tone for what would be an electrifying rookie season. By week 3, he was already showing the league his ability to dominate games, rushing for 112 yards and his first career rushing touchdown against the Kansas City Chiefs. But it wasn't until week 6 against the Chicago Bears that Peterson truly announced himself as a star. Facing a tough Bears defense, Peterson exploded for 224 rushing yards on just 20 carries, along with 3 touchdowns. His performance included a jaw-dropping 73-yard touchdown run where he juked, stiff-armed, and outran nearly every defender on the field. He also added a kickoff return of 53 yards, finishing the game with 361 all-purpose yards, breaking the NFL rookie record. That game alone earned him NFC Offensive Player of the Week honors and put the entire league on notice. Then came week 9 against the San Diego Chargers, where Peterson etched his name into the history books. In just his 8th career game, he broke the NFL single-game rushing record, piling up an absurd 296 rushing yards on 30 carries. He added 3 touchdowns to his stat line, including runs of 64 and 46 yards. By the midpoint of the season, Peterson was already the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and didn't slow down. Despite missing 2 games due to a knee injury, Peterson finished his rookie year with 1,341 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns, averaging 5.6 yards per carry. He led the NFL in rushing yards per game at 95.8 yards, and his rushing total was the 3rd most ever by a rookie. His performance that season was recognized with his first Pro Bowl selection. At the Pro Bowl, Peterson continued to impress, rushing for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 16 carries. His dominant performance earned him Pro Bowl MVP honors, making him the first rookie to win the award since Marshall Faulk in 1994. It was the perfect capstone to one of the most remarkable rookie seasons in NFL history. Beyond the awards and records, Peterson's rookie year redefined what was possible for a first-year running back. He wasn't just good for a rookie, he was one of the best players in the league, period. However, Peterson managed to take his game to yet another level in his second season. He led the NFL in rushing yards with an incredible 1,760 yards on 363 carries, averaging 4.8 yards per attempt. This was no small feat. Defenses were already game planning around stopping him, often stacking the box with extra defenders. Despite this, in Week 10 against the Packers, he rushed for 192 yards and a touchdown, almost single-handedly keeping Minnesota in the game. He capped off the year with 10 rushing touchdowns and was selected to his 2nd straight Pro Bowl, while also earning first-team All-Pro honors. The Vikings, encouraged by Peterson's elite performance, finished the season 10-6 and won the NFC North. While they lost in the wild-card round of the playoffs, Peterson's contributions were undeniable. At just 23 years old, he had already established himself as a generational talent. If 2008 showcased Peterson's yardage, 2009 was all about his nose for the end zone. That season, he led the league in rushing touchdowns with 18, a career high, while still putting up 1,383 rushing yards. The Vikings offense, now led by legendary quarterback Brett Favre, was explosive, and Peterson thrived in the spotlight. The balance between Favre's passing and Peterson's rushing made Minnesota a nightmare matchup for opposing defenses. Let's take Week 1 for example. In a game against the Cleveland Browns, Peterson broke free for a 64-yard touchdown run, during which he bulldozed through multiple defenders, escaped a gang tackle, and delivered a vicious stiff arm to cap it off. Plays like this weren't rare for Peterson, they were his trademark. The Vikings finished the season 12-4 and advanced to the NFC Championship game. While the team fell just short of a Super Bowl appearance, Peterson's impact was pivotal in getting them to that point. Once again, he was named first-team All-Pro and earned another Pro Bowl selection. At that point, he was already being discussed in the same breath as legends like Jim Brown and Barry Sanders. In 2010, the Vikings struggled as a team, but Peterson remained as reliable as ever. He rushed for 1,298 yards and 12 touchdowns, averaging an impressive 4.6 yards per carry. Even with defenses keying on him, Peterson remained consistent, putting up 100-yard games against some of the league's toughest defenses. At the end of the season, he was once again named to the Pro Bowl, the fourth of his career, and earned second-team All-Pro honors. The 2011 season started strong for Peterson, as he amassed 970 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns in just 12 games. However, things went south in Week 16 against the Washington Redskins. Late in the game, Peterson took a handoff and attempted to power through the defensive line, as he had done countless times before. This time, however, he was hit awkwardly and his left knee buckled under the weight of the tackle. The diagnosis was brutal: a torn ACL and MCL, two of the most devastating injuries a running back can suffer. The timing couldn't have been worse. Peterson had just signed a 7-year, $96 million extension before the start of the season, making him the highest-paid running back in NFL history. Now, just 4 months later, fans and analysts were left wondering if he would ever justify that contract. For most players, an injury like this might have signaled the beginning of the end. But Adrian Peterson was not most players. By the time the 2012 season opener rolled around, just 8 months after his surgery, Peterson was ready to dominate once again. Returning from his ACL and MCL tear in just 8 months, Peterson delivered one of the greatest individual seasons in NFL history. In Week 1, against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Peterson rushed for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns, immediately silencing doubters who thought he had returned too soon. What made the season even more remarkable was how he finished. Over the final 10 games, Peterson ran for 1,598 yards, an average of nearly 160 yards per game. In Week 13 against Green Bay, he torched the Packers for 210 yards, and just 2 weeks later, he put up 212 yards against the Rams. The Vikings needed every bit of Peterson's brilliance that year. His 199-yard performance in that season finale against the Packers helped Minnesota secure a playoff spot, capping a year that felt like a Hollywood script. That season, Peterson rushed for a jaw-dropping 2,097 yards, falling just 9 yards short of breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. He added 12 touchdowns and averaged a staggering 6.0 yards per carry. For his efforts, Peterson was awarded the NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year honors, becoming the first non-quarterback to win MVP since 2006. However, the years that followed would test his resilience in ways few players ever experienced. Peterson entered the 2013 season as a reigning MVP, and while he didn't replicate his otherworldly numbers from the previous year, he still had an impressive campaign. He rushed for 1,266 yards and 10 touchdowns in 14 games, with an average of 90.4 rushing yards per game, ranked second among all running backs, adding another 171 receiving yards and a touchdown to his totals. One of his best performances came in Week 4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers in London. Peterson rushed for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a vintage 60-yard score. Unfortunately, nagging injuries limited his availability later in the season, and the Vikings struggled as a team, finishing with a 5-10-1 record. The 2014 season marked one of the most difficult periods for Peterson's career. After a strong performance in the Vikings season opener, where he rushed for 75 yards, his season was derailed by off-the-field issues. Peterson was indicted on child abuse charges in Texas for disciplining his son with a wooden switch, a practice he admitted to but which sparked national controversy. The legal battle led to Peterson being placed on the NFL's commissioner's exempt list, effectively barring him from playing for the remainder of the season. In November, Peterson pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of reckless assault and avoided jail time, but the damage to his reputation was significant. The NFL later suspended him without pay for the rest of the season. Despite the turmoil, Peterson remained committed to returning to the field and proving he still had plenty left in the tank. When Peterson returned in 2015, he was already 30 years old. At this age, most running backs begin to decline. But Peterson's season was filled with standout performances, including a 203-yard effort against the Oakland Raiders in Week 10. By the end of the season, he led the NFL in rushing with 1,485 yards and 11 touchdowns. The Vikings finished 11-5, won the NFC North, and made the playoffs, though they were eliminated in a heartbreaking loss to the Seattle Seahawks in the wildcard round. That year, Peterson was named first-team All-Pro for the 4th time in his career and earned his 7th Pro Bowl selection. The 2016 season for Peterson began with optimism, but it quickly turned sour. In Week 2, against the Green Bay Packers, Peterson suffered a torn meniscus in his right knee. He was placed on injured reserve and missed most of the season, returning briefly in Week 15 before being shut down again. He finished the year with just 72 rushing yards on 37 carries, by far the least productive season of his career. After that season, the Vikings decided to move on, declining Peterson's contract option and making him a free agent for the first time. It was the end of an era in Minnesota, where Peterson had spent 10 seasons and became the franchise's all-time leading rusher with 11,747 yards and 97 touchdowns. Peterson signed with the New Orleans Saints in 2017, but his time there was short-lived. After just 4 games and limited opportunities in a crowded backfield, he was traded to the Arizona Cardinals. In Arizona, Peterson showed flashes of his old self, including a 134-yard, 2-touchdown performance in his Cardinals debut. He also had a 159-yard game against the San Francisco 49ers, proving he could still dominate when given the chance. However, a neck injury ended his season prematurely, and he was released after the season. In 2018, Peterson signed with the Washington Redskins and experienced a career resurgence. At 33 years old, he rushed for 1,042 yards and 7 touchdowns, becoming one of the oldest players in NFL history to post a 1,000-yard season. He followed that up with 898 rushing yards in 2019, continuing to defy father time. Peterson later had stints with the Detroit Lions, Tennessee Titans, and Seattle Seahawks, adding to his career totals and breaking records along the way. He became the first player in NFL history to score a rushing touchdown with 6 different teams and moved into the top 5 on the all-time rushing list. Adrian Peterson hasn't played since the 2021 season, but he also hasn't officially retired either. In his own words, he's keeping his options open this year and is ready to get on the field and play again. But I just don't think he should. He's already one of the greatest running backs of all time, with 14,918 rushing yards. That's 5th all-time and 120 touchdowns, securing 4th spot on the all-time list. His relentless work ethic, elite production, and longevity made him a legend. So how good was Adrian Peterson? Simply put, he was one of the best to ever do it. Do you know any current players in the NFL who can surpass him? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.